It's been a rough start to the 2022 season for the running back position, but thankfully, that presents some great buying opportunities if you know where to look. Welcome back, Endgame community. I'm Chris, and today I'm going to bring you some of my favorite buy low running backs as we head into week 5. And let's start with the guy who I think is the biggest buy low in all of fantasy football right now, and that is Joe Mixon. It's easy to look at Joe Mixon, see that he's only averaging 14 PPR points per game, barely averaging 3 yards per carry, and thinking this guy is terrible. I don't want any part of Joe Mixon. But when you look deeper, you realize that Joe Mixon has all the makings of a league-winning, league-breaking type running back. Through 4 games so far, he's played 74% of the snaps. He's gotten almost 85% of the running back opportunities in this offense. He's got over a 15% target share, and best of all, he has 7 carries from inside the 5-yard line, which is by far number 1 in the entire league. But he's yet to score on any of those goal line carries, which is crazy. But here's the thing about that. It's going to change. He's not going to get shut out from inside the 5. And this offense, even though it's not the offense we saw last year, it was just putting up explosive play after explosive play, this offense is still going to give him opportunities inside of the 5. He's going to have plenty of chances to score. And any running back getting this kind of usage, historically, when you look back over the last 6-7 years, the research I did over that time, any running back getting this kind of usage is almost a lock. In fact, I want to say they're a lock for over 300 PPR fantasy points, assuming they don't get hurt. That's the only real risk here with Joe Mixon, because he does have a lot of wear and tear. He does have a lot of touches. He's over that 1,200 touch mark, which is kind of the kiss of death when it comes to injuries. But if he can stay healthy and he continues to get this kind of usage, he is going to help people win fantasy championships. And right now, people don't view him as a top 5, maybe even a top 10 running back in fantasy. So go see if you can buy low on Joe Mixon. By far the best buy low in all of fantasy. All right, let's move on to another big name, Jonathan Taylor. Now, I want to preface this by saying this is only a trade you make if you're 4-0 or 3-1, or maybe if you're 2-2 but you have a really good team and you've gotten unlucky. Basically, if you don't need Jonathan Taylor right now, if you don't need to win this week, go try to get Jonathan Taylor. Yes, he's been terrible the last 3 weeks, but just like Joe Mixon, the usage is there. Other than the goal line work, of course, because the Colts aren't giving him a lot of chances to score. But he's still getting over 20 carries. He's still getting a decent target share. And we're talking about a running back in the prime of his career who's still young, doesn't have a lot of touches on him, and is a great prospect and a great running back. But again, we know he's dealing with this ankle issue. Still haven't heard a timetable yet. Maybe this week he misses. Maybe he misses a few weeks. Maybe he misses 6 weeks if it's a severe high ankle sprain. We don't know yet. So that's why I'm saying this is a guy you should only be trading for if you don't need him right away. If you don't need him in the short term. If your team is stacked, you're 4-0, you're 3-1, like I said, or you're 2-2, but you have a great team and you can hold Jonathan Taylor for potentially a week or 2 or more, depending on how long he misses. He's a great buy low right now, because it's easy to say, like, well, no one's going to give up Jonathan Taylor. He was their number 1 pick. I hear this all the time. But people are panicking on Jonathan Taylor. It's week 5. You can't go buy draft capital anymore. Sure, there are some players, and maybe the player in your league is always going to say, I can't trade my number 1 pick. It could be like week 15, and they're like, I can't trade my number 1 pick. Most people don't think that way. There are people out there with Jonathan Taylor who are 1-3, 0-4. They need to win right now. They have to win this week. It's a must win for them, and they will move Jonathan Taylor if that's what it takes to get the win. So don't just say, oh, it's Jonathan Taylor, no one's going to trade for him. Go try. The worst that can happen is the person who has Jonathan Taylor says no. Oh well, at least you tried. I think Jonathan Taylor is a great buy low right now, still a great running back, still getting great usage. I think he'll be better down the stretch and in the fantasy playoffs, and that's what really matters. All right, another injured running back who kind of fits the same vein as Jonathan Taylor is DeAndre Swift. Again, this is for teams who don't need DeAndre Swift right now. You're not in a week 5 must win, because there are teams out there that have to win this week. And maybe the team who has DeAndre Swift is in a must win right now, because they've only really had 2 good games from Swift. Week 3, put up a dud, barely played, and then of course week 4 was out with the injury. And again, we don't have a definitive timeline on DeAndre Swift. We're hearing maybe not till after their bye, which is week 7. So that means you might be without DeAndre Swift until week 8. But if you can live without DeAndre Swift for the next potentially 3 weeks, you have a potential top 5, top 10 running back sitting on your bench, ready to go in your lineup when it really matters in the second half of the fantasy season and, more importantly, the playoffs. And again, the team who has Swift, sure, they might say, oh, he was my second round pick or whatever he was, I can't move him. Okay, I get it. Some people just think that way, but not everybody thinks that way. They're 1-3 or they're 0-4 and they have to win this week. They can't wait for DeAndre Swift to get back. Give them some players that can help them win right now that you don't need because your team is stacked. You have the depth. Give them some of those depth pieces that they can use this week to help them win. Get DeAndre Swift, and when he comes back, you have a potential league-winning running back when it matters. All right, let's stick with the injured running backs. Now, David Montgomery, we heard last week, day-to-day, nothing serious, but then he didn't practice all week and didn't play. I do think it's more serious than they're letting on, but not serious enough that he's going to miss the season. I still think David Montgomery is a great buy low running back right now. People also worried that maybe Khalil Herbert, when David Montgomery does come back, that Khalil Herbert will take some work from him. He won't. This same thing happened last year. David Montgomery got hurt, missed, I think it was like 3 games. Khalil Herbert went off in those games and everybody's like, this guy's incredible. It's going to be a split when Montgomery comes back. And it wasn't. It was all David Montgomery. And when Montgomery comes back, it will be all David Montgomery again. Sure, Khalil Herbert will get some work, but it will be mostly David Montgomery. And unlike the other guys I've talked about who are still going to require quite a bit to get, David Montgomery probably won't. If you have a good wide receiver sitting on your bench, go see if you can flip him for David Montgomery. Maybe you have a good wide receiver that you just can't get in your lineup because your other wide receivers are stacked. Go get David Montgomery. Again, you might be without him for another week, maybe 2. We don't really know here. But when he comes back, he's a good workhorse running back in an offense that just wants to run the ball, but more importantly, an offense that doesn't throw the ball when they get near the goal line. Now, granted, the Bears don't get near the goal line a lot, but David Montgomery is a very solid, high floor RB2 that you can get it at a discount right now. All right, I got another big name running back, and that is Najee Harris. And look, Najee Harris probably is not going to be what he was drafted to be, which is a first-round running back. But he's still a guy getting tons of volume in the running game, not so much in the passing game, but he's still getting goal line opportunities. It might surprise you to know that he has more goal line opportunities than Saquon Barkley and only 1 less goal line opportunity than Nick Chubb. He's got 2 touchdowns on the season. Kenny Pickett isn't going to run in every touchdown. Like the Steelers have had 3 QB rushing touchdowns on the season so far. That is not going to continue. Those could easily have all gone to Najee Harris and nobody would be panicking right now about him. Now, the downside here is it doesn't look like he's going to be a 50, 60, 70 catch guy again. It is what it is. But you don't have to give up a first round type player to get Najee Harris. His value is very, very low right now. So if you accept the fact that Najee Harris is probably more of an RB2 than an every week RB1, and you send, say, a wide receiver of comparable value to an RB2, the person that has Najee Harris might be willing to take it. Because kind of like Jonathan Taylor right now, they are freaking out about Najee Harris. He's not delivering. He's not doing anything. And if they're sitting there at 0-4 or 1-3, which they may be if they have Najee Harris, they'll be willing to move him for a wide receiver that they can plug in and get more fantasy points from. All right, still a decent name here, but not as big as the ones I've talked about so far, is Aaron Jones. Again, this was a guy drafted, second round a lot of times, maybe third round. People thought he'd be a great high-end running back, and he did have that really nice week 2 because Aaron Jones goes off every time in week 2. But he's just been okay since, right? And A.J. Dillon's still getting a ton of work in this offense, and A.J. Dillon's still catching a ton of passes. They're basically splitting. But Aaron Jones has looked much better than A.J. Dillon so far. Aaron Jones ripping off big runs, getting more yards. You just have to accept, kind of like with Najee Harris, he's not going to be the guy you thought. He's not going to be a guy with top 5, top 10 upside. He's going to be a very solid, every week RB2 with a decent amount of upside. The other thing here is this Packers offense, it's not the offense we're used to, right? This isn't an offense that's fantasy gold anymore. So again, kind of like Najee Harris, if you accept that he's a every week RB2, not an RB1, and you give comparable value to that, and the person who has Aaron Jones doesn't view him as an RB1, because look, outside of week 2, Aaron Jones has not been putting up RB1 numbers, not even close. This is a guy you can just put in your RB2 spot. You can feel good about him every single week. No, he's not going to be a league winner or a league breaker like Mixon or Jonathan Taylor or Swift might be, but he's going to be a solid RB2. and his value seems very low right now. People are not very high on Aaron Jones at the moment, so go out, don't give up too much, but see if you can get Aaron Jones. He's a solid RB2 rest of the season. All right, now I'm going to give you a couple guys deeper down that won't require much at all to get probably, and let's start with Raheem Mostert. He will take almost nothing to get because he's sitting on somebody's bench and he's not scoring fantasy points. And look, most people just look at fantasy points. The guy's not scoring points, he's a bum. But you got to look deeper. Over the last 2 weeks, Raheem Mostert, 70% of the snaps, badly out-touching Chase Edmonds. The only problem here, or maybe it's a good thing if you're trying to get Raheem Mostert, is Chase Edmonds is getting the touchdowns. And look, people value touchdowns extremely highly in fantasy. And I get it, they're worth 6 points. I get it. But touchdowns come and touchdowns go. It's very hard to predict touchdowns, and they're not very sticky over the season. Raheem Mostert is going to start scoring touchdowns. And if he remains the lead back in this offense, I don't care if it's Teddy Bridgewater. I don't care if it's Tua. This is still a dynamic offense. They have dynamic playmakers. This is a great run blocking scheme. He's going to catch some passes. Again, Raheem Mostert, more of an every week RB2. Don't think you're getting some league winner here, but he'll require almost nothing to get. If you have a wide receiver who's just sitting on your bench, scoring a decent amount of points that you will never start, trade him for Raheem Mostert because you can never have too much running back depth, and Mostert gives you that. And then finally, my guy Rachaad White. We're starting to see it. Look, I just spent the last 4 weeks begging you to trade for Breece Hall. Now I'm going to start begging you to trade for Rachaad White before it is too late. If you watched the game last night, Sunday Night Football, sure, Leonard Fournette still the lead back there, no doubt about it. But we saw a shift. Rachaad White got 3 series all to himself last night. The best part is they were times when the Bucs had to throw and the Chiefs knew they had to throw. So that shows that the Bucs trust Rachaad White in pass protection and on throwing downs. And that was one of the big things people were worried about with Rachaad White. Would they play him in pass protection? You know, the first time he gives up a sack, he's benched, he's never seen the field again. Well, that's not going to be the case because they are putting him out there when they had to throw the ball, when the Chiefs knew they had to throw the ball, and they knew they had to protect Brady, and Rachaad White was still out there. Now, his value went up a little bit last night because he did score a touchdown. And again, fantasy players see touchdowns and their eyes get big and they think like, oh my God, this guy's the greatest. Luckily, Leonard Fournette also had a nice game and scored a touchdown. So I think that's going to keep White's value pretty low. Now, granted, White isn't going to be like Breece Hall. He's not going to completely take over the backfield unless Leonard Fournette gets hurt. But we've already heard Leonard Fournette say, hey, look, I can't last with these kind of touches and this kind of usage. And the Bucs know they can't give Leonard Fournette 90% of the snaps and all the touches. They need this guy healthy in the real life playoffs. I think this gets closer to a 50-50 split as the season goes on. And Rachaad White getting 50% of the touches or 45% of the touches in this offense, that's still super valuable. And if Leonard Fournette does get hurt, he's an instant every week must start running back for the rest of the season. And he's just sitting on somebody's bench, not scoring a lot of points, kind of like Raheem Mostert. Won't take much to get him at all. So go out, get Rachaad White now before it is too late. If he happens to be on your waiver wire, definitely add him. But I know he's rostered in a lot of leagues. So go trade for him now. Will not take much to get Rachaad White. All right, now that you know some of my favorite buy low running backs, you need to know some of my favorite buy low wide receivers. You need to know who to get off waiver wire, who to start, who to sit, who's going to boom. We've got you covered. 10 videos right here to help you dominate and win your Week 5 matchup.